Hi, in this lecture, we will learn about differentiation of exponential functions. The simplest exponential function is e to the power of x. When you differentiate that, what you get is exactly the same, e to the power of x. Next, if the power has a scalar or a constant multiplied with that x, then the derivative of the exponential term is just copying down the exponential term multiplied with the derivative of the power. So when you differentiate mx, what you get is just m multiplied with the exponential term. The general exponential function formula for differentiation is given as this. If you want to differentiate an exponential term with the power given as the function f, it can be linear, it can be quadratic, it can be any other function f, then what to do when you want to differentiate this is just, first step is to copy down the exponential term exactly as given. Do not change it. Then multiply it with the derivative of the power. So the power is f, differentiate that f, multiply it with that exponential term. And this is the formula that you have to memorize. Let's look at example 1. Look at 1a. Y is equal to e to the power of 2x. How to differentiate that? You have to remember that to differentiate an exponential term, you have to copy the exponential term exactly as it is, do not change anything, and then just multiply with the power of that exponential. So why do I write d over dx here? This means I have to differentiate this 2x. But I have not differentiated yet, so that's why I write d over dx in front. So the next step would be to differentiate this 2x term. After you differentiate 2x, you get 2. So multiply that 2 with the exponential term. Usually, we write the constant in front of the exponential term. So just bring 2 to the front of e, and that's your final answer. Now, example 1b. This is our function y. It's 7 times e to the power of 5 minus 1 over 2x. Same formula applies. First, we just have to copy down the exponential term exactly as it is. But since 7 is just a scalar, so just bring it to the front. Leave it in front of e. Next, you have to differentiate the power of e. So just write the power of e in the bracket of d over dx, which means that we have to differentiate the power. Make sure you write everything in one line. After that, you differentiate the terms in this bracket. So what you get is, 5 is a constant. When you differentiate a constant, you get 0. And this is negative 1 over 2x. X is power 1, so when you differentiate it, you get negative 1 over 2. Multiply that with the exponential term and the constant 7. Simplify your answer, and this would be the simplest answer. Next example. Y is equal to 2 over e to the power of 3x. Whenever you see a fraction, please do not think that it's always quotient rule. Even though quotient rule is always a function with a fraction. Because for us to use quotient rule is whenever we have x term at the numerator and also x term at the denominator. But do we have x term at the numerator here? No, there's no x. But at the denominator, there is x. Since there are no x on top at the numerator, there's only x at the denominator, so we don't have to use quotient rule for this question. So what to do next? The trick here is, you can bring e above. So when you bring e on top as the numerator, the power will be negative. It's easier to solve than if you use quotient rule. So how to differentiate this? 2 is a scalar, so just leave it in front, and then this is exponential term. Copy the exponential as it is. Next, just multiply with the derivative of the power of e. So just take the power of e and write it in the bracket of d over dx. Next, differentiate this d over dx term, which is negative 3x. You get negative 3. Multiply it with the terms in front. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. And that's your final answer. Now, example 1D. We have two terms of exponentials. But remember, when we want to differentiate, we can differentiate this separately because there's a plus sign in the middle. So we can look at it one by one and then just sum up the answers of the derivatives. But if let's say in the middle it's not sum, it's not addition, but it's multiplication, then we have to use product rule. But for this question, it's not multiplication in the middle, it is sum. So we can solve this separately. Remember how to differentiate exponentials? First step is to copy down the exponential term exactly as it is. Do not change anything. And then just write the power and put it in the bracket. Write d over dx in front of it. Next, we have the other exponential term behind of the plus sign. So, write a plus sign and then just copy the next term of exponential, multiply with the derivative of the power for that exponential. Well, why do I have to write that in this line as well? Because right now, I'm finding dy over dx. So that means in this line, everything must be the derivative of the y. So you cannot simply just differentiate one term and then ignoring the other term and just write your answers like this. That would be wrong. Because if you write dy over dx, that means we want to differentiate everything in this line. So you have to differentiate both exponential terms in the same line. Next, we have to differentiate the things in this bracket. For the last bracket, you know to differentiate x squared is just 2x. But what about this? We have a big surd. So before you differentiate this, what you have to do is you have to change surd to be power 1 over 2. Power 1 over 2 is for x plus 1. So make sure you write all of that in a big bracket. And then you can differentiate this expression. Remember, to differentiate this, you can apply the power rule because this is a bracket with a plus sign in the middle and we have a power for that bracket. So according to power rule, you can just bring the power to the front, multiply it with the bracket, and subtract 1 with the power. That's why you get negative 1 over 2. After that, multiply with the derivative of the function in this bracket. So differentiate x plus 1, you will get 1. Write the terms behind it. Next, all you have to do is just to simplify. Since the power of this x plus 1 is negative, so you can bring it down, and the power is 1 over 2, so it is a third. Once it is down, you can multiply that with the denominator 2. And your numerator will be exponential term times with 1 multiplied with 1. And this will be your final answer. Do not do this careless mistake. You cannot cancel off this third x plus 1 because this x plus 1 is the power of exponential. So you cannot do that. Let's look at example 2. Find the derivatives of the following function. 2a. The function y is given as x squared times e to the power of x. How many x terms do we have in this function? I can see that there's one x here and there's another x here. So this means we have two expressions in one function y. Well, what is the operation right in the middle between these two expressions? The operation is multiplication. Remember, whenever we multiply two terms together that has x term, we have to use product rule. Remember that u and the v and crossfish? What about if we have a function that has a fraction and x term at the numerator and x term at the denominator? What do we have to use? This is where we have to use quotient rule. Remember, letting u as the numerator and v as the denominator. So start by letting your u and your v. Write them side by side. Next, differentiate u and v. Differentiate u, you get 2x. Differentiate v, you get e to the power of x. Why is it simply e to the power of x? Because from the formula of derivative, you have to copy the function of exponential term. Next, multiply with the derivative of the power. This is x power 1. When you differentiate x power 1, what you get is just 1. So that's why you get e to the power of x here. Next is your crossfish. Multiply v with its u prime and then add with the u times with the v prime. Can you just leave your answer like this? Well, of course no. The final answer must always be in the simplified version. What does simplify means? It just simply means factorize everything until you cannot factorize. Here, you can factorize e to the power of x and also x power 1. So factorize x power 1 and e to the power of x. What's left on the left side is, after you've taken out e power x and x power 1, you have only 2 on the left side. Next, after you factorize e power x and x power 1, what you left is just x power 1. So this is the most simplified version of the answer. Now look at question B. Do we have x term on top and also below? Yes, on top there is x term and below there's also x term, and their operation is division. So this is where we have to use quotient rule. Start by letting your u and v. Write u and v side by side. Next, differentiate your u and differentiate your v. After that, remember the formula of your crossfish with that I in the middle and over v squared. Remember the formula is v times u prime minus with u times v prime over v squared. Next, simplify. Is there anything that you can factorize? I can see there's e power of x at the numerator. So factorize e power of x, and what's left is just negative 1 minus, you can expand that minus sign to get negative 2 plus x. Next, there's e power of x at the numerator and also e power of x power 2 at the denominator. We can simplify this. Cancel that off. So this simply means we cancel off one of the e power of x. E power of x bracket 2 simply means there are 2 terms of e power of x multiplied together. So if we cancel one e power of x, so what's left is just one term of e power of x at the denominator. Simplify your numerator in the bracket. Negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3, and we have positive x in front. And that's the most simplified form. Now, question C. There is a fraction, and on top, there's x term. Below, there's also x term. This is where we have to use quotient rule. Remember your quotient rule, you have to let u as your numerator and v as your denominator, and then differentiate it, u and v one by one. Differentiate u, what you get is e power of x, just exactly the same. Next, to differentiate v, this is e power of x, so just write e power of x, but you have to differentiate e power of negative x. And what will that be? First step is to copy the exponential function. Next, differentiate your power. When you differentiate negative x, what you get is negative 1. So that's why it's negative in the middle. After that, write your formula of quotient rule. Remember your crossfish with the I of negative divide with v squared. So you write your v multiplied with your u minus with u times with v prime over v squared. Write all of the v in a bracket and then square it. Simplify. Here you can see that you can factorize e power of x. What's left in front would be e power of x plus e power negative x. Then we have a minus sign. Put a bracket. E power of x minus e power negative x. Expand your negative sign. Open the bracket. Simplify the things in the bracket. This is e power of x minus with e power of x. So it's gone, and what's left is just 2 times e power of negative x. Why is it 2? Because we have 2 of these terms summed together. So it's 2 times e power of negative x. You cannot leave your answer like this because it's not in the simplified form, because we have e power of x in front and e power negative x in the bracket. So let me try to open the bracket, and what you get is e power negative x multiplied with e power of x. And that just simply means e power negative x plus with x, because when you multiply, the power will be plus. So negative x plus x is just 0. So e power 0 is equal to 1. That's why this term would be equal to 1. So 1 times 2 is just 2. And that's your simplified answer for this question. Now try out these other exercises. Thank you for watching.